Hey everybody, so the following Plant-Based Foods interview is between Jenna Mateki and plant-based doctors Dr. Dean and Ayesha Shartsai, who, as mentioned yesterday, have a free and truly epic masterclass which you can access, as I said, for free via the link down below. Anyway, the first question Jenna Mateki asks Team Shartsai, as they're normally referred to, is why as neurologists do they recommend a plant-based diet? Hope you enjoy the interview.
So our journey started about 17 years ago when Ayesha and I met in a party, and our first conversation was about dementia. Initially, we went to UCSD, which was the #1 neuroscience program in the country at the time. We did the esoteric work. I came from NIH prior to that, National Institutes of Health. And we did all the work. Ayesha did several publications with fMRIs, which are incredibly cool tools. And I did clinical trials and others. And repeatedly, we will see that the mouse models would show evidence, but when translated to humans, it never actually translated to outcome. In fact, 400 mouse models that showed evidence of success never translated to humans. So right around that time, we decided that we wanted to take a different path. So we took the risky path. We went to Loma Linda because it's one of the only blue zones, healthiest place in the world, the Seventh-day Adventist study. I started as the director of Brain Institute there and started research, both in the clinic and in the communities. And we've been involved in 3 of the largest studies: the Adventist Health Study, the California Teacher Study, for which Ayesha won the Youngest Researcher Award a few years ago, and the Northern Manhattan Study, Columbia University Study, which Ayesha did her fellowship in. And in all of them, when you look at nutrition and brain health, be it stroke, because Ayesha is also a stroke specialist, or dementia, repeatedly, whether it's Mind Diet or Dash Diet and others, the dominant feature when you do factor analysis, which is what are the important factors? The dominant one is not chicken. Like there's an element of chicken in Mind Diet.
Or cheese.
Or cheese.
Or wine in the Mediterranean diet.
It's not those. No. Not even. It's in spite of those things. And what's the dominant element? It's plants, 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 plants. So to us, which we actually have coined the term preventive neurologists, it's not at all controversial. It's not even close to even, the latest paper came out, Mediterranean versus plant-based. It's not even a close comparison.
Right.
The part of the Mediterranean diet that's effective is the plant-based component.
Right.
So you're actually taking an adulterated version of something and a thing that is beneficial, and then you're matching them. So there's actually no question for us that all neurological conditions, stroke, Ayesha published the largest paper in the country, California Teacher Study.
Right. Right. And I was interested in seeing what it meant to consume a Mediterranean diet and what parts of the Mediterranean diet was helpful. And it's always plants. And when you see the scoring system for these dietary patterns, it's, you get a higher score when you eat more unprocessed plants, and you get a lower score when you eat sources of saturated fats, which are meat, chicken, dairy products like cheese. And so the more people ate plants, the lower their risk of stroke was, which is incredible. And you see that pattern over and over again.
Speaking of patterns, I would like to be in the best possible position to not have dementia like Alzheimer's when I get older. It terrifies me. What are some good habits that I should start now so that I can make sure that I'm in the best possible position in the future?
I think one of the most important things as individuals and as a community that we can do is to reconsider what we eat, because our food, the nutritional patterns that we follow, is the most important environmental factor. It is something that we put in our body 3-4 times a day if you're eating that much. And everything that goes into our body either makes our brain or breaks our brain. Now, the brain is an incredible organ. It's only about 3 pounds, 2% of the body's weight. And at any moment, it can consume 25% of the body's energy. And, we always joke and say the rest of the body is there to support the brain. And this tiny little organ that feels like hard jello when you hold it in your hand, it is essentially not just an organ, it is us. It is who we are. It is our personality, our emotions, how we feel about ourselves, how we feel about others. It's about love and art and history. And for us to be able to take care of this beautiful of organs every single day, and to know that we are going to be able to prevent diseases like Alzheimer's disease, why wouldn't we do it? And again, study after study comes back and tells us that if people consume a plant-based, unprocessed plant-based diet, their risk of Alzheimer's disease goes down significantly. We have studies from, for example, from Rush University, where a MIND diet, which is predominantly a plant-based diet, when people consume that diet, the plant-based component of it, they reduce their risk of Alzheimer's disease by 53%. We have studies from the Kaiser Permanente study that showed that if saturated fats, which are found in meat, chicken, and dairy, if they're consumed less, the chances of developing dementia falls to, you reduce by 57%. And that's just making changes to your diet. Imagine if you include things like good sleep or exercise and stress management and keeping one's mind active. But that's the power of diet on brain health.
If you both could travel back in time and go to a dinner party with your grandparents, what would you make sure to share with them about your work?
Wow, I'm going to get emotional about that. Our grandparents, we both had grandparents who are our role models. And we lost them to Alzheimer's disease. They were brilliant people. My grandfather was a surgeon who went into politics, and he was responsible for rewriting the Constitution, and he worked towards women's empowerment. And Dean's grandfather was a minister of education, highly educated person. But despite their education and their cognitive prowess, Alzheimer's hit them really hard, because we saw, as children, and we heard that they didn't necessarily have the healthiest lifestyles, and they ate poorly. I remember my grandfather had processed meat all the time, and so is Dean's situation. And so if we go back and if we have a conversation with our grandfathers, I would tell him about so much hope for the diseases that he, as a surgeon and as a physician, encountered, that back then they would just throw up their hands in the air and say, well, there's really nothing that we can do about it, and give him hope and give him a picture of the possibilities that we have, whether it's public health or medicine in general.
The first conversation we had was about our grandparents. And the first thing we remember is the suffering in a very dignified way, because Alzheimer's takes little bits of you. It's a thief that takes little bits of you. You see the discomfort where they can't remember something in front of a crowd, where they say something wrong in front of a group or family. That anxiety and fear, and people who are powerful, is the worst thing to see. So for them to know that, for them and for many others that they had seen prior to them, this can be avoided by simply changing what's on our plates. Not as a judgment. This is not a judgment. We don't believe in judgment. We believe in positive, beautiful change on our plates.
You've mentioned in the past that looking at the world of nutrition and medicine in a binary way is both dangerous and unhealthy. Can you please explain why?
Data can be absolute, although it's not usually, but data can be absolute. But humans are not. Human application is not. And sometimes going from seminar to seminar, from talk to talk, we lose ourselves in the binary nature of things. When I go to communities, when Aisha goes to communities, if we say eat just this way because it's said so, and don't take the complexity into consideration, we will not only have failed that person, but what we call as a nuclear landscape. When people come to you, when they listen to you in any venue, in any situation, they're not calling you a leader, but you're leading them. Leader has an incredible responsibility, not for that conversation, but for the wake that it leaves behind. If you approached it in a wrong way, in an arrogant way, in a top-down way, in a non-listening way, and not in a communicative way, and not a receptive way, or applied something that was not cognizant of their limitations, their resources. You fail, that person might be so kind and gentle that they might not tell you, but they're going to go home. First of all, they're going to feel terrible about themselves.
Yeah.
They're going to fail it. And they will not approach anybody like you for a long time. You've created a nuclear landscape of leadership. The next person can't go there. So when we see talking heads starting fights over nutrition, over small little matters like olive oil, they haven't been in front of people. They've never stood in front of a family where they've had 2 strokes. It's much bigger. And even when you talk about the animal kingdom and the planet, the battle is much more successful if you can bring people as opposed to pull people. If you can have a conversation as opposed to hammer away. That's why it's pivotal that we don't approach human endeavors in binary ways, that we approach human endeavors in the complexity that it deserves.
Plant-based nutrition can oftentimes be seen as a very serious subject. We're diving into the data, we're looking at all the impacts it has on personal health, animal welfare, the planet. What are some ways that we can remember that plant-based eating is also fun and enjoyable?
Wow. So I'm very passionate about that topic. I feel that food is not just food. Food is not something that we put in our body. Food is the most beautiful of arts because it involves so much of our senses. It's smell, it's taste, it's vision, and it's touch, of course. And I went to cooking school because I think one of the most important public health lessons is to be able to cook. Really, I mean, it sounds dramatic, but if we're all able to learn how to cook maybe 3 to 4 meals, I think we're going to shift our healthcare tremendously. People are afraid of going to the kitchen because I think we just don't have that kind of a lifestyle that supports that beautiful art and that beautiful task. Everybody's in a rush. Everybody's hurrying up. Everybody wants to go to a drive-through to get food because it's always considered as something, as an afterthought almost. Everything else takes precedence and food is an afterthought. Oh, I just have to fill up my belly and get along with my life and so on and so forth. And so coming from the science part where we see the interaction of these beautiful micro and macronutrients and how it interacts with our blood vessels, with our cells, trying to create a picture in everybody's minds about the importance of the food choices that they make, and then come up with the final statement to say, it is really important to eat healthy food. And the way you can do it is have control over it. Have the tools ready at your home, that you have the capacity to create a beautiful meal to nourish your body. And I think it's a perfect form of self-love. Everybody wants to go to a resort or a spa or go to a therapist. I think eating good food is the